Alrighty, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. HBO here, back with another movie review. Still doing the westerns. Got two more. Well, technically, hopefully, if I can find the other one in time. Well, ASAP, I should say. This was another Sergio Leone. This is like the one western that really defined really him and Clint Eastwood. Hold on a second. Just gotta adjust this chair. Oh shit! There we go. There we go. Ha. Alrighty. Sorry, I had to adjust my chair. Uh anyway, this one is the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's kind of funny how the title is on the screen anymore. It's just showing the menu option. But I barely enjoyed this and again I'm just gonna break it down. Pretty much this film we you actually don't find out, I think, until the beginning of the second act that it's really about great. Hate yawn in the middle of talking, as I stated before. But this movie's about three different guys trying to find this loot of gold. It's in this unmarked well, they don't find it out to the end. Well, at least two of them don't. Well, one of them doesn't because one of them knew the secret. But it's in this unmarked grave. And pretty much what I liked about this Western and how every single one I've watched have been different one way or another. You know, the variables were there. Of course, the stories were all different. Is that it was building up character and tension between all three characters. And one of them in particular isn't in most of the movie. He just drops in and out every now and then. The best way I could explain it is the movie Spectre with Christoph Waltz, character who's the bad guy. Come to find out, looking up all of his screen time, it really isn't that much in the film. There's actually three different transitions of his transformation every time we do see him. Like he changes, and then finally in the third act, he changes completely. Well, physically, I can say. But going back to this, it's Clint Eastwood, Van Cleef, and I can't remember the third actor that played Luco, but I feel kind of bad because this guy did do a good job, and ironically, he reminds me of one of my uncles. A lot. He has that quirky attitude, and he pretty much is the ugly in the film, but he is a lot of humor at the same time, despite of some of the immoral shit that he does to Clint Eastwood's character, Blondie, who pretty much is the good in this film, and the bad is played by Van Cleef. uh it was odd seeing Van Cleef be a villain because the last movie, A Few Dollars More, he was the good guy. And I will say this, he did do a good job playing a bad guy in this. He was very, very sinister. And I don't know, I don't think I mentioned it in the last movie, but what the one thing I can say, when he wears a hat, it looks very, very creepy and sinister. Pretty much the best way I can describe it. If you've seen the horror movie Jeepers Creepers and Children of the Corn, Isaac, how they wear the hat and is at a certain angle and it's just creepy as fuck. And of course, the creeper from Jeepers Creepers in the first movie, in the shadows, it really hides his face, but you can definitely tell by him with the hat on. And they indirectly had did it on The Walking Dead with Gabriel's character. He looked kind of creepy as well. He was blind in one eye, and he wore that hat. And with the whole, Catholicism, black and the white tassel he was wearing and all that. So the good thing is that he looked like a bad guy. If anyone came in that season and watched it, they would assume that. But going back to this, pretty much the same somewhat formulaic pieces were there. Clint Eastwood, he's not really molded as the perfect, good guy in every single film. He does get caught and beat up. In this movie, it was even worse. The dude was dragging him in the desert, and he was dehydrated. And the only issue I had with that whole sequence was the heavy caked makeup they put on his face, because it looked like he did get beat up. And people who are dehydrated, of course, their lips, you can tell when they haven't had any water, which they also applied on him, but it was mainly in his face. It looked like, you know, he got his ass kicked, and I was like, people who dehydrate, they really don't, you know, they don't look like that until I think like they're dead. But even though that was my whole issue with the whole makeup part. But the backdrop of this film, it takes place in Texas during the Civil War. And just listening to the audio commentary, the guy was saying historically there were some battles that were fought, but I think it was mainly on the east side, mainly those 13 colonial states, the whole east strip of the U.S. where the uh, battle was being fought, or the Civil War. Because I've seen some other westerns, and I'm assuming that a few that took place around that time, like in California or mainly actually in the West, they didn't have that much of the U.S. Occupying and oh no the armies and whatnot fighting, because I think was it number one, the trade on the West, I think past Texas, and this is just me assuming, like from like New Mexico, California, and Arizona, it really wasn't that big. Now that I think about it, it is true, because Mexico was a free slave, trade. So when slaves did flee, they either went to the north up to Canada, and there was probably, yeah, a few that went to south into Mexico. And then someone had made a post today on Facebook how they were saying the U.S. was trying to buy it up or do something, to get those slaves back, but that really didn't happen. And I'm to take that back. It wasn't New Mexico; it was Mexico, you know, modern day Mexico. So, there were some battles fought, but it really wasn't as heavy. I think in this story, it was in the Santa Fe area, and I want to say El Paso, but I could have that mixed up. But more, facts about this film. The cinematography is really good. The music in here is really, really good, especially in the final scene where Luco's looking for the unmarked. Well, he thinks it's a marked grave, but it's really an unmarked grave, and the camera just tracks for a long time, building up that tension. And some westerns I've seen, the more recent ones, or the more modern ones, of course, No Country for Old Men and Django. Django does establish some of those shots that Sergio had done, but of course, with Quentin Tarantino, he's seen so many westerns. It wasn't just Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns. He mimicked, of course, it was Shane, High Noon, Searchers, and probably a few more that I don't even know. But Sergio Leone, he has his mark in Western and cinema history for the stuff that he's done. And of course, the other films I just mentioned, because they have some iconic, shots and cinematography, and of course with the music. And what the commentator was also saying, one of the biggest, you know, uh, things that really defined who he was that triangular shot or the Mexican standoff, pretty much the mimic of the last movie, except it was on a much more wider scope. And this time, all three dudes are intending to kill one another. But of course, there is a twist. You know, Luco's gun was never loaded, and to play that safe, Clint Eastwood's character Blondie shoots, Lakeith's character, whose name is in this movie Angel Eyes, so it was killing him. And the thing is all three of these guys had different backgrounds. One was an outlaw. I think the ugly, which was Luco, he was the outlaw. Angel Eyes was a mercenary, because he even killed people who had hired him to do a certain job, which was established in the beginning of the movie. And I want to say Clint is pretty much the generic bounty hunter, but him and Luco were doing a scam out of every town, they were in. They'll have a bounty, he'll bring the bounty, they'll pay him. Right before they're about to execute him, he'll shoot the noose, and Luco would escape. He'll give half the cut to him, and they'll just do it all over again. And at one point, he does double cross him. Blondie did double cross Luco. I think he said he became too much of a burden or something like that. He left him in the desert. Eventually, Luco catches up to him, gives him the same treatment. I can't remember exactly where they were going, but that was the point where dude, Blondie was getting dehydrated, and then that's when they come across the runaway army carriage, and that's how they and one of the guys in there was getting the information to Luco, as well as Blondie gave him two different sets of information about where the gold was hidden. Yeah, I think Luco had the information of the cemetery, but Blondie had the actual location of the grave marker where it was at. And throughout the whole movie, they had to buddy with each other again, in order to get it. And it was a constant, loyalty, shift back and forth because they were playing cat and mouse. And again, it works well because it is the Wild West. And even in this reality, in the real world, people would do that too. It just depends on how it's really executed. I don't know if they can do this in cinema with all the technology and all and everything going on. But, I could be wrong. Could be a good writer, to come on, establish a similar story, and that'll be it. But I fairly enjoyed this film. It was a lot of funny little details. Realized Lakeith's character was missing a piece of his middle finger on his right hand. They did a lot of good close-ups at the final scene that dragged out for a long time. But it was between the character's eyes and some medium shots, as well as their hand on their guns. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, dude was missing a finger, and it's kind of funny because with some actors who are amputees, you never really know until they either tell you or someone tells you. Sometimes you can catch it and see it, like and this one was a funny treat for me. The Black Power Ranger, Walter Jones, he's missing a middle finger, I think, on the same hand. And it's funny because if you see Power Rangers, you never really see it. His hand is always hidden, especially when they do the little morphing thing. But he was down there for Dragon Con, and I just briefly walked by the table. Him and the Red Ranger was there. And yeah, his finger is missing. Like, now that I think about it, it's his left, it's his left hand, not his right. Yeah, so that was just pretty funny. I'm kind of curious to ask because the only amputee I know in my family is my uncle. He's missing like two of his fingers on his left hand, I believe, and a piece of his index. And come to find out, it was an accident he had got into when he was younger working. And I couldn't even think about, some kind of machinery chopping his fingers off, just unbelievable. But, you know, I fairly enjoyed this film. It's kind of decipher, right now, which one of them were really my favorite because this one was really long. It was like 3 hours, and the shots and the story was all good, but I really liked the character dynamic that was in A Few Dollars More. And even the other one, A Few Dollars Less, I believe. I might be saying these titles wrong. Let me see. This Full of Dollars was the first one, my bad. For A Few Dollars More was the second. A Few Dollars More was when the Lakeith character and Clint, they were teaming up. And so far, every single three I've watched so far have been really good. Like the story dynamic, even the first one. It's just very hard to believe. I really possibly have to see this with another film nerd audience or something like that, and they can decipher it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this review. I think the next one is Hang 'Em Up High, and I would talk to everyone later. Sayonara.